Neal?
Cool. So the discussion tonight really is around, I guess, the solar rhythms to a certain extent. I mean, it's not that it excludes the moon rhythms, but we have actually been focusing on those a bit more. And I'm sure I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but just for the sake of saying it, just to kick off, we're at this point, or very soon, where we've got this equal day and night. We've got the sun over the equator instead of further north, and starting to move south to warm us up. And obviously, depending on where we are in the country, we've got all sorts of interesting activity with weather, plants popping out into bud and maybe blossom and leafing. And I know the vignerons are worried about frosts, which they've just had. We've just had a lunar eclipse and a bit of a wild node day yesterday. We had hail here. So, yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, really, in terms of what's happening all around the place.
We've just gone for a perigee moon again as well.
Have we?
Yeah.
Yes, we have too. I missed that one out. Thank you.
We just what?
Perigee.
We've just gone for a perigee moon again, a perigee full moon.
Yeah.
So quite high energy, moon energy.
Where is this lunar eclipse you talk about?
It's on Brian's calendar.
It's
not on our one. So
right.
Yeah. And
it's not observable in the southern hemisphere. That's the reason why it's not recognised.
What's that?
It's observable in the northern hemisphere. That's the reason why it's not on the
so that's not on this one. But there's a really nice picture. Once again, I'm using Brian's because it sort of shows exactly what's happening here with the Milky Way and the zodiac. That there's this lovely, it's not really a cross because it's spatial and it's dynamic and 3D and all of that. But at this time of year and also at the autumn equinox, if we could perceive these highways, we would see that they're nicely balanced. And if I show you a couple of other months, well, even if we just go to December, you'll see that it looks quite different. So everything moves, everything's always changing, and this is the challenge for us, or the gifts, I suppose, that we can develop as we start to get to know some of these rhythms. And for those that want some tools that might be helpful, I have shown this before. We have shown this marvelous book that actually was put together by Weleda UK and Monty Waltham, and was republished and is still available online. Sadly, Weleda doesn't have any more, but there's some fantastic information in there. And while it is for the Northern Hemisphere, it's pretty easy for us to, transpose that. And so there's some really interesting information about the daily rhythms and then the moon rhythms and the apogees and perigees and the ascending and descending moon, etc., in here. So, it's a nice, simple format that makes it really easy for people that don't have a lot of kind of Steiner speak, I suppose. And the other tool that I find really helpful is I'll unfold it. It's a bit of an older version. The one currently that's on the website is the Biodynamic Gardening Guide that Stephen or Major, I never know how to say his name, and Brian Keats put together ages ago. And that has some excellent information on the moon rhythms and so forth as well. But it's got a fantastic chart here that shows what is happening at the solstices and the equinoxes and how you can work with the shadow of where the sun moves to and comes back to. And I find this quite helpful because it's a really concise overview of lots of good information. Just quickly flip through it.
Are they equidistant, those constellations does he have there, or are they in their true size?
They are.
They're in the tropical.
It's the sidereal. Yeah, he uses the sidereal. Is it 30? No, they look different sizes to me.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because he uses the sidereal, not the tropical zodiac. So, you know, this is another confusion with lots of people, which we can add to with the Cultivating Conversations. And maybe Rachel might talk a wee bit more about those. But I just wanted to read down the bottom. There's some nice information kind of about what's happening in the seen and unseen realms that would be helpful just to sort of hold while we're having our talk tonight. So the element of earth in winter is anticipating spring. So, you know, nothing's ever cut and dried. It's always moving. So the observation that we can kind of spend time sitting on the earth and thinking about, seeds fall to the earth. In this great contraction, atmospheric water vapor can turn to frost. Crystalline action on the sap sweetens fruit and pasture for the following season. The bigger picture, light and warmth that worked outwardly in summer now works within the earth. In this way, seeds are given the power to emerge again in spring. And then there's a third little thought, biodynamic mindset. Inner processing gives birth to a new faculty or new faculties and creative strengths for insightful working with nature. And then as we move towards spring, which is already starting to anticipate summer, which is working more with the watery aspect, the observation, new beginnings. Birds and wild animals are giving birth. Plants are shooting out of the ground and are mostly at a watery, leafy stage. The bigger picture. Light that was stored up over summer has been transformed in the earth's depths over winter. It now gives the plant the power, or the will, to burst out of the ground, the beginning of the annual out-breath. And the biodynamic mindset thought, draw on this winter-gained strength to begin new projects and plantings. So that was just a little introduction from me, and comments, questions, thoughts, experiences that anybody would like to share, probably wave your hand around and feel free to ask questions, share anything that you feel might be relevant.
Rachel?
Well, James, good to see you. Yeah, well, last evening, just bringing it right into the living realm, myself and a couple of biodynamic friends from Paikakariki. I live now in Titahi Bay, it's north of Pomerory. And my now local mountain is Whitiraya, which is right on the sea coast, overlooking Mana Island. And we went up there and stirred 500 right at the very peak as the full moon came up last night. And you know, luckily and wonderfully, it was really clear at the horizon, and we could just see it, just the tiny tip as it arose. And it came up after about 40 minutes of stirring. And so we completed the stir as the moon just came above, and then spread it round the top of Timata Peak. Oh, sorry, Whitiraya 500 for the world. And that's something I started probably 15 years ago. Rudolf Steiner talks about a really beneficent energy between the equinox points on the zodiac. And I'm not sure, but with it, when, of course, at the equinox, the rising point and setting points of the sun and moon on your horizon are approximately the same. So you're getting them both following the same path across the sky. Whereas at the solstices, as you know, the sun rises and it takes 16 hours in the sky, takes a high path across the sky. And when it's full moon at the summer solstice, the full moon closest to the summer solstice, the moon is above the horizon about 10 hours. It takes that low course across the sky, and they're quite opposite. So there's a polarity there, and Rudolf Steiner spoke in this lecture when it was still during the First World War, very enigmatic lecture, but he said, think about it, from what the hints I've given, you might work something out. Well, you know, those sorts of things, pretty hard to work out. But anyway, I thought, well, can't lose by stirring 500 when these two bodies are right on the horizon points, so strong points. So the sun was setting in the west as the moon was coming up in the east, full moon. And just to pick up that powerful beneficence for the world, stir it into the water and spread it around this high point overlooking, you know, there's nothing. You look out and there's, well, there were the gulls sort of floating and wafting on the upcurrent of the breezes at the top there, and you see Manor Island, and then actually you see across to the South Island. We sort of could see that last night too, quite clearly. Yeah, so this is a little bit away from the topic perhaps, but it's just really, there's something strong about that, the equinox time. And of course, Easter is timed so that it's always within the first week following the spring, or the northern spring equinox. And I know well, some philosophical doctors who make their own remedies, who would collect the water for making their remedies for the year. They would collect it from a spring on Easter Day, Easter Sunday, which would, again, that would be always just within those few days after the equinoctial full moon. So I think that it just gives me the feeling that there really is something good about that energy. And so that's why I do this, to pick up on their energy for the world and for the future.
Okay. James, you want to?
Silly question, but what does equinox mean? What's the nox mean?
The nox mean, I'm not sure. It may be equinoctial, I don't, as in, I don't know, is it like nocturnal? Like
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, you have to look it up.
I can answer that.
Oh, can you? Gita?
Yes, nox is Latin for night.
Ah,
yes.
so equal, because it's equal day and night. So it's interesting that there's no day in there, that it's just the night, huh?
But the summer equinox is
The spring equinox.
oh, solstice. I'm thinking of. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, got you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gita.
So just another little thought to add on there, Rachel, is with Easter being connected with, well, for us it's our autumn equinox, but let's just say with the equinox, we also have Michaelmas, which is connected with the equinox as well. You know, there's sort of within a week, there's those influences there. So, you know, it depends on what you want to add into your mix of things that you follow. But it seems that there is this kind of cosmic and earthly connection that has that potential to be in balance for a few days, moving slowly.
Yes, yeah. You are just mentioning about the tropical and
Sidereal.
the sidereal zodiacs. Just two systems that describe two different things, basically. So yesterday, on when's our actual equinox? It's on Sunday, is it?
Sunday night, very early Monday morning. It's about
Yeah. So at that, the point on the zodiac where the sun is at that moment, basically that's counted as 0 degrees Aries. And so seasonally, it's always in the middle of, in the middle of spring. And it means that if you're, say, born in Cancer in New Zealand, you're a midwinter baby. 2,000 years from now, if you're born in Cancer, you'll still be a midwinter baby in New Zealand. Whereas if you use the tropical system, if you're born in Cancer in 2,000 years' time, you'll probably be, I'm not sure, but you'll be a sign or two different from the sun will be in a different constellation. So it stays seasonally correct, but it's one of those things that kind of, well, I've heard Ben Atkinson say this, that of course, it's kind of a human concept to work out that you can make this day, call it 0 degrees Aries. And he said that, okay, so that in his mind, that's part of using that system for human astrology, whereas in the plant world, it doesn't go through thinking through ideas like that and making a plan. It just, what you see is what you've got. So they're using the sidereal for the planting calendar and in relation to plants. So yeah, that's just one little thought to add to that. But these two systems, yes, it's confusing, but on the other hand, it's simple. It's just like, okay, you've got one system that stays in line with a sort of man-made, made-up system that stays in line with the seasons, or you've got what you see in the sky, which is, I mean, undeniable because that's what you see.
Any other thoughts or questions from anybody else?
Simon,
Yes, James.
are you going to say something?
I'm
Yes.
thinking. I'm trying to think of something a question to ask. I usually have them, but mine's blank at the moment.
That's all right. We can move on. Glynis or Yvette, anything in that was like, oh my God, or can you explain a bit more? Or yes, I got that, etc., that you'd like to comment on?
No, I'm just always really grateful for, just the depth of knowledge and experience that I get to listen to in these calls. So, yeah, just thank you. I guess the thing that pops out at me the most is, that plants don't necessarily go by human time. They just do planting. And we got a lot to learn from them in the timelessness of life, in a way. So yeah, thank you.
Glynis, anything you'd like to ask or mention or say?
I'm great, thanks. Sorry, I got a bit distracted during that talk because I had an important message come through, so I might have to listen to it again if there's a recording.
Hello, Bennett.
Hi, Rachel.
James, do you have anything that's in your lifetime as the BD practitioner around equinox that rings true to your heart or brings anything out that's worth speaking to?
Yes, the thing that I'm seeing more and more is that Mother Nature opens a window of opportunity to you, and you have to be prepared, if you're working on the land, to take advantage of that opportunity. And so when you come up to the spring equinox, you suddenly think, oh my goodness me, if it's got the spring equinox is going to be in 10 days time, then I've got to get this and this and this and this in order so that I can take advantage of that particular rhythm, as opposed to being reactionary on the day. So the thing that I like about it is to find where this equilibrium is between the etheric energy and the beginning of the astral energy, and how the fruit bodies of the plants, in this instance grapes, but also lettuces, so
Yes. Yep.
come to bear fruit that is got nutrient density in it. And I think that in biodynamics, we are not talking enough about the nutrient density of the food that we're growing, and the benefit. I can remember Peter saying to me years ago, and Rachel, that the food goes two ways. It goes that way, but it first of all goes up that way and feeds your brain, biodynamic food. So therefore, coming to the equinox is sort of this onset of new thinking that you have to have for the season and how you're going to prepare yourself for it. And, you know, we've got the equinox, but we've also got this end of the descending period in Taurus on Monday, when a whole lot of us around the country are going to be stirring 500 and getting out there and getting the community together and doing these sort of things. So as a spring equinox, if it's equal night, Gita, as you were saying, then it's sort of like Mother Nature's door opening for the spring and moving us forward into the season. It's a key in the door of what we're doing. I can't talk to you about it from a cosmic point of view, but the other thing is that all of these happenings are happening at a certain degree, 23 degrees, I think, to the sun. Correct me if I'm wrong.
23.4, you're correct,
Oh,
James.
sorry. And the thing that the people I speak to around here, you know, when I say to them that today Uranus and Saturn and Earth were in a triangle, and all of these things are happening, different things are happening every day, and then people, you see their jaws drop when they realize, oh my God, there's a whole lot more going on out there. And when you think of an opera or a double-decker bus, an opera to listen to, a double-decker bus to sit in, you've got so many seats to get into to go on the journey and to appreciate what you're going to see. That may be a bit too wordy, but I mean, how do you feel today and yesterday and the day before? My goodness me, wasn't there some energy going on 2 days ago? Just incredible.
Yes.
And to analyze that energy and see that it's actually positive energy that you can manifest into good mahi.
You actually raised, sorry, go ahead, Christine.
No, go, Simon.
You actually raised a really nice point there, James, around, so we've got the equinox occurring, which is equal night, equal day, but it's also the bridging point between the etheric winter and the astral summer.
Exactly.
Of the sunlight starting to take, so the more astrality starting to kick in into the summertime. And it's interesting that we have a calendar that split the year equally into 3 months to make our 3-month season based on the calendar. But then there's also the astronomical spring sort of starts at the equinox and goes through to what's considered summer starts at the summer solstice. But it's a bit weird to have that thinking, because for me, spring is now starting what I've known to be 1st of September. Spring's actually starting mid-August now. And autumn is starting mid-March instead of the 1st of, or sort of mid-February instead of the 1st of March, which is the meteorological system of what we consider our seasons. But yeah. Anyway,
Another
Okay.
thing, another thing that infuriates me at this time of the year in this region that I'm living in now is that there was a big frost on Wednesday, and so the growers got out there and they cut their grass that
that's
short,
right. That's right.
and they sprayed some substances onto their vines, which is supposed to negate frost. And you think if you're the Father Earth, starting off in the spring at the equinoxial point, and someone comes and does that to you, it's sort of like going, hey, mate, put your togs on and go down to the Antarctic for a couple of days. And there's no soul in this growing platform. And I said, for goodness sake, if you leave your grass that long, you're at least going to get a few dewdrops in the morning, which are going to have far more radiating energy than flat ground that you think is just going to let the frost not settle. And I'm sitting here going, goodness me, I think I'm a dreamer.
I have personal experience of that one too, James.
Really?
Of my time in the Archie Valley. I grew up with that mantra that you need to mow as flat as you can to allow for air movement. Anyway, I had 2 vineyards. I managed to mow one vineyard the night before the frost, and the other vineyard we didn't get to in time. Guess which one got frosted and which one had no frost damage at all? The one that had no frost damage had a foot of grass underneath the vines. It was crazy. I don't know how that worked, but the vineyard we mowed ended up with frost damage.
Well, I would imagine that if you've got a length of grass, that's holding quite a bit of heat, just the air
Yes.
within there.
Yes,
And
yes.
and a bit of earth heat that's still there will be held by that grass. And yeah, I would think that would
Yeah.
be a bit.
Well, you think how much heat biology produces when it's regenerating. Yeah, the biology in the soil, with the grass going there and the mycorrhizal fungi going down there and everything else going up here, there's energy going on, which is generating heat.
I can add to that, because I notice, because I'm not on a vineyard, I'm a home garden, and I have mostly a pollinator garden, and I try and create lots of food for the insect and the bird life around here. So I've been observing, what's going on between the thrushes and the blackbirds and the finches and the little white eyes, sort of out my window. And I've purposely left my grass, much to the, horror of my neighbours who mow it every 2 weeks religiously, so that there's a lot more dandelions and daisies and seeds and so forth. And I've got little birds hopping around all over the place, doing their little kind of spring mating thing and pushing one another out of the way and flying here and there. And so I'm noticing that the times of day that they're starting to come in. And of course, this is this air and warmth realm that we live in and don't necessarily pay much attention to, that is becoming really active as these forces come up from winter and also start raying in from the cosmos. And so all of this life is going on, not only with the birds, but, animals giving birth, etc., etc. So this warmth and light process can really be observed at this time of year if we start paying attention to it. And it just means sitting still for a while, whether it's because of frost or wind, or, we've had everything, warmth, cold. Everything happens around this time of year where the equinox comes in. It's like everything's all up and around, and cause a sort of chaos in a way goes on. And at the solstices, it seems like things are a bit more contained and settled. Winter solstice, everything's underground, much harder to see what's going on. Summer solstice, we're all out there at the beach, all sleepy and dreamy and not doing much thinking and utilising that energy. So we can use ourselves as a barometer to start to observe the impact of these rhythms that have been around forever. Everybody's observed them. You can go back to the Egyptians and the Greeks and the Persians and the Indians and even the Chinese, and everybody the Celts, Scandinavians, everybody has some kind of what we might call ritual, celebration, honouring of these, particularly, not only 4 points, there's more, type of observable experiences if we stop and pay attention to them. And I think this is the thing for me with biodynamics, has really helped me to notice that what's happening outside of myself, what's happening inside, and whatever's happening inside affects outside and vice versa. Peter Backus says a lovely thing where he said, the mind or the brain of the plants is outside. It's like, they don't carry it around like we do. But what comes to them is very much in that so-called unseen realms. That if we start paying attention to, then we can weave more consciously together. So that's what, for me, feels important at these times of year, that I anchor something of that consciousness. That feels important.
And with the amount of dandelion flowers at the moment, this year is the first year I've gone out and picked them and put them in a vase on my kitchen bench. And you're thinking about consciousness, but you look at those jolly things radiating this love and light and energy in the morning and in the day and in the evening time. Incredible. And also the spring equinox, if you imagine if we could get the 7-year-olds to spend a little bit of time sitting and wondering. Yeah. So to sit and wonder at this time of the year is going to be the great formulation for how you're going to approach the next 3 months.
Or next 7 years.
The next 7 years, exactly, yeah. Imagine if the schools could do that. Hey, you 7-year-olds, those who are 7, come and sit under the willow tree or sit under the whatever it is or on the dandelion patch and just think.
The Steiner schools would do this, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
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 Geeta,
Yes.
come on, you're very quiet.
She
Well,
sometimes.
I don't have anything particular to say. I'm just enjoying the conversation. Thank you.
That's
Good.
nice.
Good. Yeah. Rachel, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, back on the west coast here, these equinoctial winds we've been having a lot of just these, the last week or two. And yeah, if we notice the rising point of the sun, of course, and where it comes on the horizon, it's changing quite quickly from day to day as moving along. So we've got this sort of swinging, and whereas around the solstices, that rising point slows right down and even comes to a standstill. And, like in the day length and tune with all. But there's another rhythm on that as well that's related to, it's related to the position of the nodes, because like at the moment, the nodes are fairly close to the equinox point. And so the solstices, this is when, indeed, at the moment, we're at the maximum point where the northmost rising point of the moon is 5 degrees further along the horizon than where the sun's northmost rising point, because of the effect of the nodes. And so we've got this even bigger swing, and the same at the other end. So, and it's just going back and forth, and on a really wide sort of pendulum swing. Whereas in 9 years' time, that comes in and it's 5 degrees inside the solstice, where the sun rises at the solstice point. So it's a much gentler time. And I mean, it feels to me, my experience since I noticed this, particularly in the 2006 maximum time, was that, and that was the year we had the cyclone Katrina and whatever in the States, and it's just
And we
that
had serious
not
frost
only,
too.
yeah, and not only do you get this sort of equinoctial, you know, being whammed about, but it's like extra strong and there's maximum years. And I mean, that's a noticeable thing with these nodes and how that affects the you know, where the rising points are further apart. And I mean, and even Stonehenge, you know, they knew about the nodes and the effect of the nodes and producing this cycle of 18 years, 7 months and 11 days sort of thing. The moon's changing of the moon's nodes, and you know, from which you can predict eclipses. And of course, back 5,000 years ago, if you could tell people that the sun was going to go out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it did, well, it put you in quite a powerful position, wouldn't it? You know, because even then they could predict eclipses just from making these observations year after year. These rising points of the sun and moon.
And it's always interesting, isn't it? If you live in one place long enough, we can start to notice how that changes. You know, I've got certain trees and mountains, and I can see, you know, that in winter, yep, the sun is definitely further north, and there's certain places which are slightly more, well, not slightly, quite a lot more north, where the rising and setting sun happens. And then by the time we're getting close to the summer solstice, as you said, you know, there's quite a big difference. I'm not sure if I could measure where it is, but there's a big movement. Not only has the sun further overhead, but it's moved, you know, right to its furthest point south. And it, you know, I can sort of point there for summer and, you know, there for winter. So it's quite fascinating to actually be able to set that up and start to observe that. Simon.
Yes,
I do that. I do the same myself, Christine. So during the coldest months of winter, when we're pruning out in the vineyard, and especially around the winter solstice, when the sun disappears, I know I've only got 15 minutes left to work. When it disappears out of the Mount Pisa range and the sun sets, and I've got 15 minutes left of work, and I can use that for about 3 weeks to know that my work day is coming to an end. And also in the morning, I've learnt where the sun's sort of an orientation of the sun on the horizon to when the morning tea is. I don't have to look at my watch. So anyway, it's that whole connection. You said it before about BD and how it enlightens the world to observation of nature. And the more and more that you observe, the more and more you become part of it, and the more and more that it just becomes easier.
Yeah, and the more and more you love it. That's the funny thing, you know. You think,
Yes.
how could you love just that you know those points on your horizon, and that for me, moving house, it was like I knew where things were back on Havelock North, and here's like I'm learning fast, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can I just ask a question, not to do with the equinox, but just for the fact that we're coming to the end of our descending period and into Taurus.
Yep.
And as I said, on Monday, we're going to be putting 500 on. What's all of your opinion on, given the frosts and and you can see on the calendar that where there might be some more frost coming in 10 days' time. What's your opinion of adding equisetum? Normally we would spray equisetum by itself. What's your thought on adding equisetum in the final 20 minutes of a 500 stir? Yes or no?
Equisetum or valerian?
Oh, sorry, valerian. Sorry.
Yeah.
Valerian.
I used to do it at Burn Cottage, was add valerian to the 500 stir to add a warming character to the 500 going onto the lamp.
Yeah.
It was done religiously when I was at Burn Cottage with Shane.
Yeah. And
that was because of our cooler climates down here. But yeah, That is, in my view, it's the right approach, is to utilize the warming for the 500 to put it out in a warming environment to just help with the nature of the biology and the energies that's in that 500.
The second question is, when you're using a spraying apparatus to do it, excuse me, I've seen people spraying it out, you know, like that.
Yes.
And I said, no, you've got to put a big nozzle in and put it out so that it comes out as a single trajectory, that as you're going down the road or down across the paddock or something, that the line of water is wavering across the ground, so that the application is going splat, splat, splat onto the soil, as opposed to spraying it into as a mist. And we're talking about, okay, spring equinox coming into out of the spring and into the spring. And I passed a comment to someone today that they should maybe lie down in their paddock or the vineyard with their face up when the apparatus goes past and see what their face feels like. This might sound stupid. See what their face feels like in terms of, you know, like this, as opposed to being sprayed. And if you're a microbe sitting in the grass, how would you like to have that? What would the microbes in the soil, you know? I've always thought, and it's going back to Peter and Rachel's day, that that dynamic drop has the ability to magnify out far better than, and we're talking about 500 and Valerian here, has far better to magnify out as opposed to having it sprinkled on the ground like a pepper. Like when you think of using a piece of broom, you know, sorry, a brush or a piece of foliage, and you flick it out like that and it comes out and goes on the ground. That's what we're trying to emulate mechanically. Any thoughts?
Peter, any response to that?
Thought to that. Way back in the day when we were setting up our spraying apparatus and so on, we used to do a test on the gravel driveway. And as you say, we were trying to emulate what happens when you throw it out with a brush. And we have a spray thing that does that. And our spray pattern on the gravel driveway was exactly like you do flicking it out with a half brush. So it's not a single squirt, it's a spray like that. But as you're driving along, because of the speed and how much is coming out of the nozzle and the kind of nozzle, it's a nozzle that puts out big droplets. It's not a fine spray like you use for 501. So we have interchangeable nozzles at the end of the boom, and you just put in a nozzle that's going to give you big droplets, and you drive at a certain speed so that you get that droplet pattern.
And what did you notice by doing that, Geeta?
What do you mean by that question?
Well, with using the bigger droplets, was there anything that you said you tested on your driveway first? Was there? Did you experiment?
Just to see the droplet pattern. You know, you can't see that on a grassy field, but on a gravel driveway, you can see where concrete would be perfect, but you don't have a concrete driveway on a farm. So you can see the wet spots on the gravel where the drops land, so you can see what your spray pattern is.
Yep, good thought.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? Because of this fine mist for the 501 being silica, and you know, a little going a massively long way, looking at the silica energetics, and then that suggestion from Steiner about larger droplets with a brush for the 500, and possibly even the cowpat pit, you know, having more of that manure aspect to it, but having more substance, shall we say, to it. And that's always been intriguing for me as to not necessarily why that was suggested, because it makes sense, but if you're adding equisetum, then is there indications of it needing to go out in fine mist anywhere in the lectures, or for like the vineyards? That would be or fruit. I don't know, fruiting aspects.
Are we talking equisetum or valerian?
Sorry, valerian, yeah, but also
Valerian with 500.
yeah, the 507 valerian, yeah, that warming aspect, you know, knowing that it's stirred separately as a liquid, you know, separate to the other compost preps, and then often put out as a blanket. You know, when I do the cowpat pit, you know, it's flicked on, but some people actually pour some into the center of the cowpat pit. Other people pour the remaining over, sort of like a blanket effect. So, you know, that's not the same, but different to this fine mist and this broader droplet aspect.
For me, just talking to that one before, James might have an answer to that. For me, using valerian as a sort of a frost preventative, it sort of needs to be used as a contact to the point of contact that it's directed towards, to have that warming effect on the plant versus an energetic warming effect from the soil up the plant. It's a weird one actually. I contradicted myself just then.
Well, no, but it's intriguing. Gita, do you want to say?
Yeah. Did I catch you saying it would be interesting to what was said in the agriculture course? Is that
Yeah.
what you said? Because I don't think Steiner had the idea that you could use the compost preparation separately. As my understanding is, he said these are a set, you use these together. So the idea of actually spraying it out on the land by itself, I don't think was even thought of in those days. So we've kind of made that
No, it
up.
wasn't.
Yeah.
So, but he did. I think either he or the research ring, after
Sorry about
they set up this research ring, and either Steiner said or the research ring said on the compost heap, sprinkle the valerian over the heap. So that gives a clue. They didn't say spray it over the heap, they said sprinkle it. So again, that seems to imply to me that if we're putting it out with the 500 or separately, we want a sprinkle effect, as in big droplets like you do with 500.
Yep, good observation. Anybody else thoughts, James? Is that kind of answer your question, or anything you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, here I am again. But here we are going to put on 500 and valerian to warm it up so we can get frosts. But it's been commented on in Europe and France in particular that this leads to a very hotter, drier summer. Great generalization. And so now they're talking about adding chamomile to the 501 to calm the atmospheric heat down so it's not so hot. And this is trying to deal with climate change, which is sort of going on to the point that do the biodynamic preparations, if they're used intelligently and collectively, socially and economically, have an effect on mediating the change in climate. I personally think it does, but I can't get that out there too much. So 500 and valerian, 501 and chamomile. Chamomile tea, not the prep.
I think this is a really good example of why we don't fiddle too much. You know, you get a good idea, and it's an idea that's come out of your rational thinking, and so you do it, and you find actually has a lot more different effects from what your rational thinking has come up with. And so then you've got to do some other thing to counteract that sort of boo-boo that you made. I don't know. I'm pretty comfortable with just sticking by with the preps as a set.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. Gita, where have you gone?
Yeah, I just dropped out as well.
Yeah, I don't want everybody to have to observe me having my dinner. So every time I finish speaking, I turn myself off, but I'm still listening.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So the 501 for spring, my intention was to put that on the day after the 500. Is that, I mean, if the conditions are right, does that work? This is going to be
Yes.
my first time putting in 501, so I'm a little bit.
It's called a sequential spray,
Hmm.
and it is practiced in Australia, if I'm aware of that one, where the 500 will go on the last day of the descending moon in Taurus, and then a 501 can go on the next morning with the first day of the ascending, and it's a sequential spray to counteract or to add a balance to the two poles.
And what's the
And
third
would
one?
that, sorry, and would that one then have the same effect, like how you guys were talking then about the warming effect? Would that kind of have the same effect on the frost, say, like you were saying?
Well, the 501's more bringing in that archetypal form, and it's sort of more that cosmic
Okay.
structuring, I suppose. It's not that it's not warming, because it's working with very strong light, and that would
Sure,
be
but more etheric light than
well, yeah.
sunlight.
And also, I'm not sure, I think you were there when we talked about, there's the potential, if you just use it generally, that you can push plants too soon towards their seeding fruit potential. So that just going back to, I remember you saying that you had fruit trees, and that watching for bud burst, just as bud burst starts to happen, is used to be in Australia kind of seen as an ideal time to put the 501 out. And if it aligns with 500, because you really do need to have at least 3 500s out beforehand, or you've got nothing to form, just in really basic terms, I would say.
Sure.
That where you spray it's yeah, I don't know, maybe Rachel, you've got more understanding of that. The valerian's quite a different energetic substance to the silica from my viewpoint, but that's just me.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people, and myself included, who do sequential spray quite often. And so, yeah, then your 501 is often in the applied in the descending period, because obviously, well, if you do them on consecutive days, obviously quite often they'll be both in the descending or both ascending. Yeah, would choose the descending more.
So, Yvette, what are you proposing to do then?
Well, I'm not making any recommendations to anyone, but yeah, I just do know a lot of people who they use sequential spraying rather than using them separately.
And that's where, you could look on the calendar for where you've got a fruit day moving into a root day, so to speak. If it's fruit trees and that's what you're working on. I mean, it does depend, if it's leafy vegetables or herbs or so forth, then that's what you kind of also look for, that influence perhaps as well.
But I suppose, yeah, two things. I remember Peter saying that if you're going to use the 501 on seedlings, it would be when they've got 2 leaves. And then or 4 leaves. Okay. And so I just spray it directly on the seedlings then?
Sort of over and around.
Okay, sure.
Spray sort of into the air, but it kind of drifts over or drifts down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that would be the same with because I've got the fruit trees are blossoming, which is so beautiful. So do the same over the food forest. Just spray it like as sort of like a mist.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And it's a little bit watching your conditions. I know last year I was in the Hutt Valley where it was just raining so much, and this orchard was just kind of drowning, it seemed to me. So there was like the odd sunny day came and a nice clear sunrise. I was out there with the 501 several times, or it might have been even 2 weeks apart, and just any time you could get in, it just was so heavy and wet. It was just my reaction was this needs lightening.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So we're nearly at time. Is there any other thoughts, any questions anyone wants to bring before we say good night and take our thoughts into sleep with us? Simon, have you potted off to have your dinner?
What a beautiful conversation we've had tonight, is all I can say. Sorry.
That's all right. Caught you with your mouth full. Sorry about that.
But no, I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here, and we've had some nice discussions, and we have raised more points than I was expecting out of tonight. So all this really helps, and it was very fruitful because it's all recorded for future reference for any new members or any new people in their journey in BD. So thank you, James and Rachel and Gita, for your experience.
Oh, thank you, everyone, for sharing what you share. We all, just share it.
But otherwise, I have nothing to add around this point of being the equinox, other than it is the point where, as James rose, that the astrality of the sunlight starts to take over the etheric of the nighttime.
And thank you, Glenys, and thank you, Yvette, for coming along, because it's always lovely to meet with other people, but it's great to have some different faces and different people turning up, and knowing that people are getting out there again. And just a little plug, because we've got a little bit of a competition going for people who are doing things for either on the equinox or around the equinox. If you send your little photos or a little video of something that you're doing, and we've got a little 100 years celebration kind of package that we'll send out to somebody, which will be one of Brian Keats's calendars and some 500, some Cowpat, and I think 501. Simon, is that right? Was that?
I can't confirm or deny that one.
Yeah, anyway, it's on the the BDNZ Instagram page and Facebook page, as well as in the footnote for those that got the footnote. So yeah, if you'd like to put a little something together with some friends of your events, then send them in to Jane, and you might win some goodies.
Just one comment I was going to make around this 500 spread that we're focusing around the equinox. Down here in Centro Otago, and a bit of an understanding on my part, is around the warming of the soil. We're only just starting to get warming of the soil down here, like in Marlborough, even in Canterbury. There's the grapevines as a bit of a standard. There's green leaf on those, whereas down here we're only just starting to. Most of our grapevines are starting to get to a point of woolly bud. We have some of the early varieties which are just starting to get pink tips, so they're getting to a rosette stage, so they're just starting to break bud. My understanding from this with spreading 500 is, and this is where it can be seasonally across especially New Zealand with such a latitudinal spread, is everyone in the North Island, the soil's already warm, it's active, the 500 can go on, whereas down here, I'm not going to be looking at doing a 500 spread until October. And this is when I hope to be doing it on the Peregrine Vineyards as well. with the aim of that's when our true spring, even though it's spring down here, we've got fruit blossoms and stuff. Our true spring doesn't start until October, even though we're in the same realm with the equinox. I feel that our spring, we're getting, what I mean by true spring is when the full life systems and the warmth is in the atmosphere and kicking in. And also we're affected also by that light, what Rachel was talking about before, about the movements at the moment of the sunlight. We, being further down on the latitude of the globe, we see that even more so versus those in the North Island. It's accentuated the further the latitude you get away from the equator, that sun movement is accentuated. And then of course we notice it with very little nighttime at the summer solstice.
Yes, you get the very long days, and
Yes.
some much longer than in the North Island.
But once we get the very, very long nights.
Well, we can head towards the next discussion of the solstices, and in the meantime, any ideas for next month's Cultivating Conversations, just let us know, or if you've already thought of something that you'd like. So, we sort of dived into a bit more of an in-depth discussion for this month, but next month we can go back to the beginners series, which Simon's been carrying really nicely, where we've been looking at the cowpat pit. And yeah, if anyone wants to make suggestions, just let us know, send an email, and we
Cowpat
can
pit would be great.
cowpat pit. We've done 2 lots already.
Oh,
yeah, well, we can easily do it again, I'm sure, but yeah, with the last 2 months we've focused on that. So if people want a bit more cowpat pit, we can easily do that, Simon, can't we?
We can, but we have exhaustively spoken about it in the last 2 months, James. The first one was just a general talk around CPP, its context, its uses, and a certain amount, but it was more just a general talk to that substance that has came out of the through adaptation of biodynamics. And then we found through some questioning that people were actually asking, well, how do we make it? So last month's one was actually around the actual making, the sourcing of the materials, how we make a pit. If you feel we can extend on that, James, feel free to let us know.
What was your source of basalt?
It's an age-old question.
This is a big issue, and we're working on that. We've found a source, but we have to buy it in very large quantities. So the basalt is currently an issue. So
is it from Pomerory?
Is it Oamaru, or it's down? It's definitely central.
So the one you might be thinking of is the Black Hawk quarries in Dunedin. Yeah, it's in Dunedin. It's south of Dunedin, and that's where Sue sourced the heap several years ago, and it got divided amongst many of the South Island BD practitioners, which most people are starting to run out of. There was a heap, and then she brought a ton of it, and it got divided up amongst all the BD practitioners around the South Island. And I think a fair bit went to Marlborough, but it's since starting to run out. And now the questions, I mean, we've seen these questions in a few social media pages and stuff of where do we get, and Seacliff Organics, I haven't actually gone down that route of checking them out, but they do have an andesite rock product. But we are working on a possible suggestion, James, it's a thought of mine, of trying to set up that we provide basalt rock through the association. So we provide all the ingredients for someone then just to add, I want to say add water, but add manure, and we provide the ingredients that CPP can be set up. I don't know if you guys feel that's a good way to be going.
Yeah,
I wonder what, like trying to turn grey wacky into flour. whether that could be considered basalt. But basalt's supposed to come out of volcanoes, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's high silica rock. So in India, we always
At
use
this moment, it is not
granite.
a high silica rock.
No.
Yeah, we
Well-
we talked about this the other day. You look it up on the internet. Just Google, is basalt high in silica? Every site will say basalt is low in silica and high in calcium, and it's in the CPP because of its calcium, not its silica.
So there we go.
That's everybody up, isn't it?
That's a good discussion for. We'll carry on with the CPP discussion next month, and
But we
will-
already talked about that. That's
I know,
what came
I
up
know.
last time.
But we can easily add on to this and have a look at. Geeta's put out some information, and I think we've got to sort of look at what does each person do in different parts of the world, and what kind of quality are we needing to supply, as Simon said, to get the best basalt we can, rather than the sort of the different versions. So we will have to leave it there at that tense moment, and
Yes.
and just think about that for next month, and we can carry on with these lovely conversations. So thank you everyone for being there,
Sounds
and
good, Christine.
we'll see you all next month,
Christine.
maybe, or whatever, and have a good sleep and a good equinox celebration.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Christine. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
everyone.
Geeta. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, James.
Bye.